The day Grace walked out of her husband's house.
Welcome back to Africa Folktale channel. So yesterday I showed my new neighbor my channel. I told her what I exposed about marriages, and she decided to share her own experience with me. And I felt so bad. And after much consideration, with her permission, with the help of AI, I was able to structure it in a way I will be able to share it with you guys. Please, I wanted to listen to this story to the end, share your thoughts, comment where you are watching from, and feel free, most importantly, feel free to share your thoughts about this story on the comments.
The day Grace walked out of her husband's house, the whole compound went quiet for one heavy second. Not because they felt sorry for her, not because they suddenly remembered the years she had cooked for them, smiled for them, prayed for them, served them, respected them, and swallowed pain like it was food. No, they went quiet because Grace did not cry the way they expected. Before we continue, if you are new to my YouTube channel, please like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and turn on the bell notification icon so you will be the first to be notified anytime I drop a new story. And don't forget to comment where you are listening from. Also, share your thoughts about this story. Let's continue. She stood at the doorway with one small brown bag in her hand, her wedding ring still shining on her finger, her eyes red but strangely calm. Behind her, inside the living room she had decorated with her own hands, another woman was laughing loudly. That woman wore a bright gold dress, expensive perfume, long hair that fell over her shoulders, and the confident smile of someone who believed she had finally taken another woman's place. Her name was Vanessa, and Vanessa was celebrating too early. She sat beside Grace's husband, Daniel, holding his arm like a trophy. Daniel did not look at Grace, not once. He stared at the floor, as if the tiles were more important than the woman who had loved him before he had money, before he had a car, before his company became known in Lagos, before his mother started calling him a man of status. Grace waited for him to say one word, just one. Stay. I'm sorry. Don't go. Anything. But Daniel said nothing. His mother, Mrs. Helen Carter, stood near the staircase with her arms folded across her chest. Her face carried no pity, only victory. Grace, she said coldly, you have delayed my son's life enough. A home without children is not a home. Go and find peace somewhere else. Grace swallowed hard. Somewhere else. After 7 years of marriage, 7 years of waiting, 7 years of hospital visits, 7 years of blaming herself for a pain she did not create, this was all she had become to them. A problem to be removed. A shame to be hidden. A woman they believed was empty. But what none of them knew was that Grace was not empty. Deep inside her, life had already begun. Not one life, not two, three. 3 tiny heartbeats she had discovered only 2 days earlier when she visited the hospital alone because Daniel had said he was too busy. She had sat on the small bed in the scan room while the doctor smiled and turned the screen toward her. Mrs. Carter, the doctor had said softly, you are pregnant, and it looks like triplets. Grace had covered her mouth and cried so hard the nurse had to hold her shoulder. For 7 years, she had waited for that moment. For 7 years, she had imagined running home to Daniel, jumping into his arms, watching him spin her around like he did in their early days, hearing him say, I told you we would be fine. But before she could tell him the miracle, she came home and found Vanessa inside her house. Now, as Grace stood at the door with her secret still locked inside her chest, she looked at every face in that room. Daniel, the man who once promised forever. Mrs. Helen, the mother-in-law who turned pain into punishment. Vanessa, the new wife who believed Grace's tears were proof of defeat. And then Grace did something nobody expected. She removed her wedding ring, placed it gently on the center table, and whispered, one day you will understand what you threw away. Daniel finally lifted his eyes. For the first time that evening, fear moved across his face. But Grace had already turned away. And by the time the gate closed behind her, Vanessa was still laughing. She did not know the celebration she started that night would one day become the loudest regret of her life. Before we continue, please, if this is your first time here, like this story, subscribe to my channel and watch to the end, because what happened to Grace did not end at that gate. Also, comment where you are listening from before sharing your thoughts about this story. I want to know who is watching and how this story touches you. Grace met Daniel Carter when she was 24. Back then, he was not the confident man people now respected in business meetings. He was a young architect struggling to find his place in Lagos. He lived in a small apartment in Surulere with peeling paint on the walls, one old standing fan that made noise every night, and dreams that were bigger than his bank account. Grace was working as an assistant manager at a small fashion store in Victoria Island. She was beautiful in a soft, quiet way. She had smooth brown skin, gentle eyes, and a smile that made people feel safe. She was not loud. She did not fight for attention. But there was something about her presence that brought peace into a room. Daniel first saw her on a rainy Friday evening. He had rushed into the fashion store to escape the rain, holding a broken umbrella and looking completely embarrassed. Grace noticed water dripping from his shirt and handed him a towel from behind the counter. "You look like Lagos has dealt with you today," she said with a small smile. Daniel laughed, and that was how it began. At first, they were just strangers who talked whenever he passed by. Then they became friends. Then Daniel started creating excuses to visit the store even when he had nothing to buy. He would stand near the window and talk about buildings, city designs, and how he wanted to create homes that felt warm, not just expensive. Grace listened like his dreams mattered. That was the first thing Daniel loved about her. Other people laughed when he said he wanted to own one of the biggest architectural firms in Nigeria. Some told him to look for a real job. Some said dreams did not pay rent. But Grace never laughed. Instead, she would say, "Then build it. Start small, but don't stop." Those words stayed with him. When Daniel's first big proposal was rejected, he called Grace, ashamed and angry. She met him at a roadside restaurant and bought him food even though she had very little money left that month. "You failed today," she told him gently, "but you are not a failure." Daniel looked at her across the plastic table and felt something shift inside his heart. 3 months later, he asked her to be his girlfriend. 2 years later, he proposed. The proposal was simple. No cameras, no crowd, no expensive decoration, just Daniel kneeling in the same small apartment where his fans still made noise at night. "Grace," he said, holding a modest ring with trembling fingers, "I don't have everything yet, but I promise you, if you walk with me, I will never make you regret it." Grace cried before saying yes. Their wedding was small but beautiful. Her parents were proud. Daniel's mother, Mrs. Helen, smiled that day, though her smile did not fully reach her eyes. She had wanted her son to marry someone from a wealthier family, someone with stronger connections, someone who could help him climb faster. But Daniel loved Grace, and in the beginning, that love was enough. The first year of marriage felt like sunlight. They lived in a rented apartment in Lekki. Grace cooked dinner while Daniel worked late on designs. Sometimes, he would come home tired, and she would rub his shoulders as he talked about clients who refused to pay on time. Sometimes, they would eat noodles on the floor during power outages and laugh like they owned the world. They were not rich yet, but they were happy. Then, Daniel's career began to rise. A real estate company accepted one of his designs. Then another client came, then a bigger contract. Before long, Daniel was no longer begging for opportunities. People started looking for him. He moved from one project to another, and money started entering their home in ways they had never known before. Grace was proud of him. She helped manage his early records, answered calls when he was too busy, arranged meetings, even used her fashion sense to help him choose how his office should look. She became his quiet support system, the person holding things together behind the scenes. But as Daniel grew, so did the voices around him, and the loudest voice belonged to his mother. At first, Mrs. Helen's visits were normal. She would come with food, sit in the living room, and ask Grace polite questions. But after the second year of marriage passed without a child, her tone changed. "Grace," she asked one afternoon, staring at Grace's stomach. Are you people planning to wait forever? Grace forced a smile. We are trusting God and also seeing doctors. Doctors? Mrs. Helen scoffed. In my time, women did not need all this long story. Once you entered your husband's house, children followed. Grace lowered her eyes. That was the beginning. By the third year, Mrs. Helen no longer hid her disappointment. She would call Daniel privately, but Grace could hear her voice through the phone. My son, you are getting older. My son, don't let one woman close your family line. My son, love is good, but children are important. Daniel would end the call and tell Grace not to worry. My mother talks too much, he would say, pulling Grace into his arms. Don't mind her, we are in this together. Grace believed him. That was her first mistake. Because words are sweet when life is easy, but pressure reveals what love is made of. The hospital visits became part of Grace's life. Blood tests, scans, pills, injections, waiting rooms filled with women holding babies, nurses asking painful questions, doctors speaking in calm voices while Grace's heart broke quietly. Most of the tests showed no clear problem. Sometimes it just takes time, one doctor told them. But time was exactly what Mrs. Helen refused to give. By the fifth year, the insults became open. At family gatherings, Daniel's relatives would speak as if Grace was not sitting there. A man like Daniel should have children running around by now. This house is too quiet. Some women are beautiful outside but bring no blessing inside. Grace would smile weakly and excuse herself to the bathroom, where she would lock the door and cry silently into a towel so nobody would hear. Daniel used to follow her. Then later, he stopped. His excuses changed. I don't want to disrespect my mother. You know how older people talk. Please don't make everything an issue. Each sentence cut Grace deeper than the last. Still, she stayed because she remembered the old Daniel. The Daniel who ate roadside food with her. The Daniel who said she was his peace. The Daniel who promised that no pressure would break them. Grace held on to that memory, even when the man in front of her started becoming a stranger. Then Vanessa entered their lives. Vanessa Blake was introduced as the daughter of one of Mrs. Helen's church friends. She was stylish, bold, and always perfectly dressed. She had a sharp smile and a way of speaking that made every compliment sound like an insult hiding under perfume. The first time Grace met her, Vanessa hugged her too tightly and said, Wow, you are so calm. I admire women who can stay peaceful through difficult situations. Grace knew what she meant. Daniel pretended not to. After that day, Vanessa started appearing everywhere. At Mrs. Helen's birthday dinner, at Daniel's office lunch, at family events. She laughed too loudly at Daniel's jokes and touched his arm too often while speaking. Grace noticed. A wife always notices. One night, after Vanessa sent Daniel a message at almost midnight, Grace asked him about it. Daniel frowned. Must you suspect everything? I'm not suspecting everything, Grace said quietly. I'm asking why she is messaging you this late. She is helping my mother plan something. What thing? Daniel stood up from the bed. Grace, I'm tired. Every day, it is either children, my mother, doctors, or your sadness. I am tired. Grace froze. Your sadness. As if her pain was now an inconvenience. That night, Daniel slept facing the wall, while Grace stared at the ceiling until morning. Something changed after that. Daniel started coming home late. His phone developed a password. He stopped asking Grace about hospital appointments. When she cooked, he barely ate. When she tried to talk, he said he was stressed. When she cried, he looked uncomfortable, not concerned. Then came the final blow. It happened on a Saturday evening. Grace had returned from the hospital earlier that day. She had gone alone after feeling dizzy for several mornings. She expected another disappointment, another test, another doctor telling her to be patient. Instead, she received the miracle of her life. Pregnant. Triplets. The doctor asked if she wanted to call her husband, but Grace shook her head, crying and laughing at the same time. No, she said. I want to tell him myself. She bought a small white baby blanket on her way home. Just one, because she could not yet afford 3 of everything in that moment. She imagined placing it in Daniel's hands and watching his face melt with joy. For the first time in years, Grace walked home with hope. But when she entered the compound, she saw strange cars parked outside. Music was playing inside the house. Women were laughing. Grace stepped in, slowly, confused. The living room had been decorated with flowers. Drinks sat on the table. Mrs. Helen was smiling like a queen. Daniel stood near the center of the room in a white shirt, looking nervous. And beside him stood Vanessa, dressed like a bride at a private celebration. Grace's hand tightened around the baby blanket inside her bag. "What is going on?" she asked. Nobody answered at first. Then Mrs. Helen stepped forward. "Grace," she said, "we didn't want to do it this way, but it is better you know now. Daniel has made a decision." Grace looked at Daniel. "What decision?" Daniel opened his mouth, but no words came out. Vanessa smiled softly, pretending to be innocent. "Grace, please don't make this hard. Daniel deserves a family. His mother deserves grandchildren. Everyone deserves happiness." Grace felt the room tilt. She turned to Daniel again. "Is this true?" Daniel rubbed his forehead. "Grace, I didn't plan for things to happen like this. That is not an answer." His voice dropped. "I'm sorry." 2 words. After 7 years, he gave her 2 words. Mrs. Helen lifted her chin. "Vanessa is already prepared to give this family what it needs. We cannot keep waiting forever." Grace stared at them, and for a moment, she almost laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because the pain was too big for normal tears. Prepared to give this family what it needs. If only they knew. If only they knew that inside the woman they were throwing away, the family's future was already growing quietly. Grace's fingers moved toward her bag. She almost pulled out the hospital report. She almost shouted the truth into their faces. She almost said, "I am pregnant. Not with 1 child, but with 3. But then she looked at Daniel, really looked at him. He was not confused. He was not trapped. He was ashamed, yes, but he had chosen. He had allowed another woman to stand in Grace's home. He had allowed his mother to turn his marriage into a public rejection. He had allowed Vanessa to smile in the space where Grace had cried for years. And in that moment, Grace understood something painful. A miracle should not be used to beg for love. Her babies were not a ticket back into a house where their mother had been humiliated. So she said nothing. She walked into the bedroom while the room watched her in silence. The bed was still covered with the bed sheet she had washed 2 days before. Her cream was still on the dresser. Her Bible was still beside the lamp. Her wedding photo still hung on the wall, showing 2 young people smiling at a future that had now turned into ashes. Grace packed only a few clothes. She left the baby blanket inside the bag. Then she came back out. Daniel's eyes followed her, but his feet did not move. Vanessa whispered something to one of her friends, and they laughed under their breath. Grace heard it. Mrs. Helen heard it too, but she did not stop them. At the door, Grace paused. She looked once more at the man she had loved with her whole heart. "Daniel," she said softly, "I hope the peace you are choosing is worth the pain you are causing." His face tightened. She removed her ring and placed it on the center table. Mrs. Helen smiled as if a battle had ended. Vanessa leaned closer to Daniel, already enjoying her victory. Grace walked out. The evening air hit her face as she stepped outside the gate. She did not know where she was going. Her parents lived far away, and she was too ashamed to call them immediately. Her phone was in her hand, but her fingers trembled too much to press any number. Then a voice called from behind her. "Grace?" She turned. It was Emily, her closest friend, standing beside a small black car across the road. Emily had come to drop off some fabric samples for Grace, but one look at her face told her everything had gone wrong. Emily rushed to her. "What happened?" Grace tried to speak, but the strength she had used inside the house finally broke. She collapsed into Emily's arms and cried like a woman whose heart had been pulled out. Emily held her tightly. "Come with me. Don't explain now. Just come." As Emily helped her into the car, Grace looked back at the house one last time. Through the window, she could see Vanessa dancing in Grace's living room, dancing beside Grace's husband, dancing over a marriage she believed was dead. Grace placed one hand over her stomach and whispered through her tears, "I will protect you, all three of you, even if I have to start again with nothing." Emily, who had just entered the driver's seat, turned sharply. "All three?" she asked. Grace closed her eyes. The secret had slipped out. Emily stared at her, shocked. "Grace, what do you mean all three?" Grace slowly opened her bag, pulled out the folded hospital report, and handed it to her friend. Emily read the first line, then the second, then her mouth fell open. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Grace, you're pregnant." Grace nodded, tears running down her face. Emily looked at the paper again, and her voice shook. "Triplets?" Before Grace could answer, the gate of Daniel's house opened behind him. Daniel stepped out. He stood under the compound light, staring at Emily's car like he had suddenly realized something was wrong. Grace quickly wiped her tears. Emily gripped the steering wheel. Daniel took one step toward them, then another, and Grace held the hospital report tightly against her chest, knowing that if Daniel reached the car and saw what was in her hand, everything would change before she was ready. Emily started the engine. Daniel called her name, "Grace!" But Emily drove away before he could get close, and as the car disappeared into the Lagos night, Grace looked back through the side mirror and saw Daniel standing in the road, confused, restless, and too late. Emily drove like someone running away from danger. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, her eyes fixed on the road, but every few seconds she glanced at Grace. The city lights of Lagos flashed across Grace's face through the window, one moment bright, the next moment dark, just like the life she had left behind. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Only the sound of the car engine filled the silence. Grace sat with the hospital report pressed against her chest. Her other hand rested on her stomach, as if she was afraid the pain in her heart could reach the three tiny lives inside her. She could still hear Daniel calling her name, Grace. For years, that voice had been home to her. Now, it sounded like a door closing behind her. Emily finally slowed down when they reached a quiet street in Yaba. She parked in front of a small apartment building with faded cream walls and a black gate. Then she turned off the engine and faced Grace fully. "Tell me everything," Emily said softly. Grace shook her head. "Not tonight." "Grace, please." Her voice cracked. "If I talk about it now, I may not survive it." Emily's eyes filled with tears. She leaned over and hugged her. "Okay," she whispered. "Then don't talk. Just breathe." That night, Grace slept in Emily's spare room, though sleep did not really come. She lay on the small bed, staring at the ceiling fan as it turned slowly above her. Every sound made her jump. Every time her phone vibrated, her chest tightened. Daniel called 11 times. She did not answer. Mrs. Helen called once. Grace stared at the screen until the phone stopped ringing. Then a message came from Daniel. "Please pick up. I just want to know where you are." Grace read it again and again. Where she was. He had not cared where her heart was when he allowed another woman to sit in her home. He had not cared where her dignity was when his mother disgraced her in front of strangers. He had not cared where her pain was when she cried alone after every hospital visit. Now he wanted to know where she was. Grace turned the phone face down and closed her eyes. But tears still slipped out. The next morning, Emily found her sitting by the window with untouched tea beside her. "You didn't sleep," Emily said. Grace gave a weak smile. "I tried." Emily sat beside her. "What are you going to do?" Grace looked down at her stomach. "I don't know. You have to tell him." Grace's face changed immediately. "No." "Grace, he is the father. He stopped being my safe place before he knew he was going to be a father." Emily became quiet. Grace's voice trembled, but her words were firm. "If I tell him now, they will not come because they love me. They will come because of these babies." His mother will suddenly remember I am a good wife. Vanessa will suddenly become the outsider. Daniel will suddenly kneel and cry. But what about yesterday? What about the years before yesterday? What about the way they threw me away when they thought I had nothing to offer? Emily sighed. I understand, but raising triplets alone will not be easy. Grace laughed bitterly. Nothing about my life has been easy. Emily reached for her hand. You don't have to do it alone. Those words broke Grace in a different way. She had spent years in a marriage, feeling alone beside the man who promised to stand by her. Now, in one small apartment with a friend who owed her nothing, she felt more protected than she had felt in her own home. For the next few days, Grace stayed with Emily. Daniel kept calling. At first, Grace ignored him. Then he sent messages. I'm sorry about how things happened. My mother went too far. Please, let us talk like adults. You embarrassed me by living like that. That last message made Grace stare at her phone for a long time. She had been thrown out, replaced, laughed at, and humiliated. Yet somehow, she had embarrassed him. Grace blocked his number. But peace did not come immediately. Because when someone breaks your heart, silence does not remove the memories. Sometimes, silence makes them louder. Grace remembered Daniel's early kindness. She remembered how he used to hold her hand in public. She remembered how he used to say, when our children come, they will have your smile. She remembered the way they once spoke about names, schools, family vacations, and a future filled with noise and laughter. Now that future was inside her, and Daniel did not even know. Later, Grace went back to the hospital for another scan. Emily went with her. The doctor, a calm woman named Dr. Laura James, looked at Grace's file and smiled gently. Mrs. Carter, how are you feeling? Grace hesitated at the name. Mrs. Carter. The title felt heavy now. I'm trying, Grace said. Dr. James studied her face. Stress is not good for you right now. Triplet pregnancies need careful monitoring. You will need rest, good food, regular checkups, and emotional support. Emily squeezed Grace's hand. Grace nodded, but fear rose in her chest. Good food, regular checkups, rest, support. Those things sounded simple for a woman with a loving husband and a stable home. For Grace, they sounded like mountains. After the appointment, Emily took her to a quiet restaurant nearby. Grace barely ate. I need a job, Grace said suddenly. Emily frowned. You need rest. I need money. You can stay with me. For how long? Until the babies come? After they come? Emily, I cannot become your burden. You are not a burden. Grace looked away. That is what people say in the beginning. Emily's face softened. I am not Daniel. Grace flinched. Emily regretted it immediately. I'm sorry. No, Grace whispered. You're right. You are not. Within a month, Grace found remote work helping a small fashion brand manage customer orders online. The pay was not much, but it gave her something to hold on to. She worked from Emily's dining table, answering messages, organizing deliveries, and saving every naira she could. She sold some jewelry Daniel had bought her during better days. Not her wedding ring. That was still on Daniel's center table where she had left it. But the necklaces, bracelets, and designer bags that carried memories she no longer wanted were sold quietly. With the money, she paid for hospital visits, bought maternity vitamins, and began planning for the impossible task ahead. Meanwhile, life in Daniel's house was not as sweet as Vanessa expected. At first, she enjoyed the victory. She moved into the master bedroom within days. She changed the curtains Grace had chosen. She removed Grace's framed pictures from the hallway. She told the cook to stop making meals the old way. She posted smiling pictures online without showing too much, but enough for people to understand that she was now the woman beside Daniel. Mrs. Helen was pleased. My daughter, she told Vanessa one morning, you have brought light into this house. Vanessa smiled and touched her stomach dramatically, even though there was nothing there yet. By this time next year, Vanessa said, this house will hear a baby's cry. Mrs. Helen laughed with joy. Daniel heard them from the staircase and said nothing. He had thought life would feel lighter after Grace left. Everyone had told him so. His mother told him Grace's sadness was draining him. Vanessa told him he deserved a woman who brought joy. His relatives told him a man with money should not waste his years waiting. But now that Grace was gone, the house did not feel lighter. It felt unfamiliar. Vanessa filled the rooms with noise, perfume, guests, and laughter, yet somehow the emptiness became louder. Grace had been quiet, but her quietness had carried warmth. Vanessa was exciting, but her excitement left him tired. At night, Daniel found himself standing at the door of the room Grace used to pray in. It was empty now. The small chair was gone, her books were gone, the soft scent of her lotion was fading. One evening, he opened the drawer beside the bed and found a folded piece of paper Grace had forgotten. It was a grocery list written in her neat handwriting. At the bottom, she had written, "Remember to buy Daniel's favorite tea. He has been stressed lately." Daniel sat on the bed and stared at that line until his eyes burned. Vanessa entered the room and saw the paper in his hand. "What is that?" she asked. "Nothing," Daniel said, folding it quickly. Vanessa's smile disappeared. "Is it hers?" Daniel did not answer. She crossed her arms. "Daniel, I hope you are not allowing guilt to confuse you. That woman left. She chose to leave." Daniel looked at her slowly. "Did she choose to be humiliated too?" Vanessa's face hardened. "Your mother only said what everyone was thinking." Daniel stood up. Maybe everyone was wrong. For the first time, Vanessa saw something dangerous in his eyes. "Regret." She walked closer and softened her voice. "Baby, don't do this. Grace had 7 years. 7. I am here now. I can give you the family you want." Daniel looked at her stomach without meaning to. Vanessa noticed and smiled again. "Just give me time." But time was no longer Daniel's problem. His problem was the memory of Grace living with a strange calmness in her eyes. His problem was that last sentence she had spoken. "One day, you will understand what you threw away." What did she mean? That question began to disturb him. At first, he thought it was just pain talking. Then he remembered the night she left. Emily's car. Grace holding something to her chest. Emily's shocked face. The way Grace looked terrified when he came out of the gate. Daniel tried to call Emily, but she did not pick up. He sent a message. "Please tell Grace I need to speak to her." Emily replied hours later. "Grace needs peace. Leave her alone." Daniel stared at the message, anger and shame fighting inside him. He wanted to drive to Emily's apartment, but he did not know if Grace was still there. He wanted to ask friends, but he did not want people knowing how badly everything had ended. Pride held him down, the same way pride had destroyed his marriage. 2 months passed. Grace's pregnancy began to show. At first, it was only a small curve beneath loose dresses. Then it became harder to hide. Emily became more protective, always checking what Grace ate, reminding her to rest, and scolding her when she walked too long. One Saturday morning, Grace stood in front of the mirror wearing a simple blue maternity dress. Her hands trembled as she touched her growing stomach. "I am really going to be a mother," she whispered. Emily smiled from the doorway. "Not just a mother of 3. Grace laughed softly, but tears filled her eyes. "I am happy. I am scared too." "That means you care." "What if I fail them?" "You won't." "How do you know?" Emily walked in and stood behind her. "Because you are already choosing them every day, even when your own heart is broken." Grace looked at her reflection. For the first time since leaving Daniel's house, she saw something beyond pain. Strength. Not the loud kind. Not the kind that makes speeches or fights in public. The quiet kind. The kind that wakes up every morning with a broken heart and still chooses to live. But the world was not done testing her. One afternoon, while Grace was returning from the hospital with Emily, they stopped at a supermarket to buy fruits. Grace wore a loose black dress and a scarf over her hair. She moved slowly now because her body tired easily. Emily was picking apples when Grace heard a familiar voice. Well, well. Her blood went cold. She turned. Vanessa stood near the drink section, dressed in fitted white trousers and a bright red blouse. Her makeup was perfect. Her smile was sharp. 2 of her friends stood behind her, already curious. Vanessa's eyes moved from Grace's face to her stomach. The smile vanished for half a second. Then it returned, but weaker. "Grace," she said, "you look different." Emily stepped forward. "Walk away, Vanessa. Vanessa ignored her. Her eyes stayed on Grace's stomach. Are you pregnant? Grace's heart began to pound. The supermarket suddenly felt too small. Emily grabbed Grace's hand. We're leaving. But Vanessa moved closer. No, wait. This is interesting. Very interesting. Grace tried to stay calm. Please move. Vanessa lowered her voice. Does Daniel know? Grace said nothing. That silence answered too much. Vanessa's face changed again. This time, fear flashed through her eyes. Then, she laughed loudly to cover it. Oh, Grace, don't tell me you are planning to appear one day with a baby and ruin everything. Emily's voice became sharp. Enough. Vanessa leaned closer. Listen to me carefully. Daniel has moved on. His mother has moved on. That house is mine now. Whatever you think this pregnancy would do, forget it. Grace looked at her for a long moment. Then she said quietly, You can keep the house, Vanessa. I am not fighting you for wars. Vanessa blinked. Grace placed one hand on her stomach. But you will not threaten my peace. For the first time, Vanessa had no quick reply. Emily pulled Grace away, but Vanessa stood frozen, staring after them with her face pale beneath the makeup. That evening, Vanessa returned home before Daniel. Mrs. Helen noticed immediately that something was wrong. What happened? Vanessa dropped her handbag on the sofa and paced the living room. I saw Grace. Mrs. Helen frowned. Where? At a supermarket. And? Vanessa stopped pacing. Her voice lowered. She is pregnant. The room became silent. Mrs. Helen's lips parted, but no sound came out. Vanessa continued, and from the look of her stomach, she has been pregnant for months. Mrs. Helen held the arm of the chair. That is not possible. It is possible, Vanessa snapped, and I don't think Daniel knows. Mrs. Helen's face tightened. For the first time in a long time, fear entered her eyes. Because if Grace had been pregnant when they sent her away, then everything changed. Their insult became shame. Their victory became foolishness. Their new wife became a mistake. Mrs. Helen sat slowly. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Vanessa watched her carefully. We have to handle this before Daniel finds out. Mrs. Helen looked up. Handle it how? Vanessa's eyes hardened. Find out where she is staying. Find out how far gone she is. Find out everything. Mrs. Helen did not answer immediately. A small part of her, buried deep under pride and bitterness, felt something like guilt. But the bigger part of her was afraid of losing control. That night, when Daniel came home, Vanessa acted normal. She served him dinner. She smiled. She touched his shoulder. But Daniel noticed her hands shaking. What's wrong? He asked. Nothing, she said quickly. Daniel stared at her. For a moment, he almost believed her. Then, his phone rang. It was an unknown number. He answered. Hello? A woman's voice spoke from the other end. Good evening. Am I speaking with Mr. Daniel Carter? Yes. This is Green Life Medical Center. We have been trying to reach Mrs. Grace Carter concerning an important appointment update, but her line is not connecting. You are listed as her emergency contact. Daniel stood still. Vanessa froze across the table. The woman continued, Please, can you ask her to call Dr. Laura James tomorrow morning? It is regarding her pregnancy follow-up. Daniel's hand went cold around the phone. Her what? He whispered. The line was quiet for a second. Her pregnancy follow-up, sir. Daniel slowly turned his eyes toward Vanessa. Vanessa's face had lost all color. And in that moment, Daniel knew. She already knew. Daniel did not move for several seconds. The phone was still pressed to his ear, but the voice from the hospital had already become distant, like someone speaking from the bottom of deep water. Pregnancy follow-up. Those two words entered his chest like a knife. His eyes stayed fixed on Vanessa. She stood beside the dining table, one hand gripping the back of a chair, her face pale, her lips slightly open. She looked like a woman who had been caught standing beside a secret she never planned to reveal. Daniel slowly ended the call. The dining room became painfully silent. Even the air seemed afraid to move. What did she mean? Daniel asked. Vanessa swallowed. Daniel, what did she mean by pregnancy follow-up? Vanessa looked toward the hallway as if she hoped Mrs. Helen would appear and rescue her from the truth. But Mrs. Helen was upstairs, and for once, Vanessa had no audience, no friends, no sweet smile, no loud confidence to hide behind. Daniel stepped closer. Vanessa, answer me. She lifted her chin, trying to recover her boldness. I was going to tell you. His eyes darkened. You knew? Vanessa's mouth tightened. That was all the answer he needed. Daniel laughed once, but there was no joy in it. It was the broken laugh of a man who had just realized his punishment had started inside his own house. You knew Grace was pregnant. I saw her today, Vanessa said quickly. At the supermarket. I didn't know before then. And you came home and said nothing. I was scared. Scared of what? Vanessa's voice rose. Of losing everything. Daniel stared at her. The words had come out too, honestly. Vanessa froze, then tried to soften her face. Daniel, listen to me. You don't understand. Grace may be pregnant, yes, but that does not erase what happened. You were unhappy. Your mother was unhappy. This house was dying. I came here because everyone believed. Because everyone believed she was barren, Daniel cut in. Vanessa fell silent. Daniel's face twisted with pain. That is what you mean, isn't it? You all believed she had nothing left to offer, so throwing her away became easy. Daniel, I didn't throw her away. You made the decision. Those words hit harder than any insult, because they were true. Daniel's anger turned inward. His shoulders dropped slightly as the memory returned with cruel sharpness. Grace, standing at the door. Grace, holding her bag. Grace, looking at him, waiting for him to choose her. And he had stood there like a coward. He had let his mother speak. He had let Vanessa smile. He had allowed his wife to walk out of their home carrying a secret that should have made them fall to their knees in joy. Daniel turned away from Vanessa and placed both hands on his head. When? He whispered. Vanessa blinked. What? When did she find out? I don't know. Daniel looked at her again. How far gone is she? I don't know. Where is she staying? I don't know. His voice broke. Then what do you know, Vanessa? She stared at him, breathing hard. Daniel grabbed his car keys from the table. Vanessa rushed toward him. Where are you going? To find my wife. The word came out before he could stop it. My wife. Vanessa's eyes filled with anger. Your wife? Daniel, I am here. I am the one in this house now. Daniel turned slowly. And that is my shame. Her face changed as if he had slapped her. Before she could speak, Mrs. Helen came down the stairs, drawn by the raised voices. What is going on? Daniel faced his mother. Did you know? Mrs. Helen stopped on the last step. Know what? That Grace is pregnant. The color drained from her face. Daniel saw it. His chest tightened. You knew too. Mrs. Helen held the railing. I only found out today. And you said nothing. I needed time to think. To think? Daniel's voice rose. Mother, the woman you insulted, the woman you pushed out, the woman you called empty, is pregnant, and you needed time to think? Mrs. Helen's pride tried to stand, but fear weakened it. My son, calm down. We don't even know if... Don't. Daniel pointed at her, his voice shaking. Don't say one more wicked thing. Mrs. Helen's eyes widened. Daniel had never spoken to her like that before. For years, she had controlled the room with her voice. She had carried herself like her son's life belonged to her. She had believed her pain, her expectations, and her family name gave her the right to crush anyone who stood in the way. But now Daniel was looking at her like he was seeing her clearly for the first time. And what he saw horrified him. You made me believe love was not enough, Daniel said. You made me feel like a failure because I had no child. You made Grace feel like a curse in her own marriage. Mrs. Helen's lips trembled. I wanted grandchildren. And now you may have them, Daniel said bitterly. But not because of you, in spite of you. He walked out before she could answer. Vanessa ran after him to the door. Daniel, if you leave now, what does that make me? Daniel paused. For a moment, he looked back at her. It makes you someone who celebrated another woman's pain too early. Then he left. The door slammed behind him. Vanessa stood there shaking, her pride bleeding quietly. Mrs. Helen lowered herself onto the sofa, one hand pressed against her chest. The house that had felt like victory only weeks ago now felt like a courtroom, and judgment had entered without knocking. Outside, Daniel drove through Lagos like a man chasing the last piece of his soul. He called Emily again and again. No answer. He called Grace's parents, but nobody picked up. Maybe they had changed numbers. Maybe they had already heard enough about him to know he did not deserve a response. He drove to Emily's old apartment in Yaba. The gate man looked at him suspiciously. Madam Emily, no dey around, the man said. When will she be back? I no know. Does Grace stay here? The man's eyes became guarded. Which Grace? Daniel knew then that Emily had warned him. He returned to his car and sat there, gripping the steering wheel. For the first time in years, Daniel Carter, the successful man with money, name and influence, felt completely powerless. He could design buildings. He could manage workers. He could sign contracts worth millions. But he could not find the woman whose heart he had broken. For 3 days, Daniel searched. He visited the hospital, but Dr. Laura refused to release any information. Mr. Carter, she said firmly, Grace is my patient. I cannot share her details without her permission. I am her husband. Dr. Laura looked at him with calm disappointment. Then you should understand why she needs protection. That sentence stayed with him. Protection. From him. The man who once promised to protect her. Meanwhile, Grace's life grew harder and more beautiful at the same time. Her stomach grew bigger, her feet swelled, her back ached. Some nights she could not sleep because one baby moved, then another, as if the three of them were already having their own tiny meetings inside her. Emily teased her gently. They are already forming a committee. Grace laughed for the first time in days. A very active committee. But beneath the laughter was fear. The hospital bills increased. The doctor advised more rest. Grace's remote work became difficult because sitting for long hours made her uncomfortable. Emily helped as much as she could, but Grace could see the stress in her friend's eyes too. One afternoon, while Emily was at work, Grace received a message from an unknown number. Grace, please, I know about the pregnancy. I am begging you. Let me see you. Her heart stopped. Danielle. She stared at the message until her vision blurred. Another message came. I deserve your anger. I deserve your silence. But please don't shut me out completely. I need to know you are safe. Grace placed the phone on the table like it had burned her hand. For the rest of the day, she could not focus. When Emily returned, Grace showed her the messages. Emily's face hardened. Do you want to respond? Grace shook her head. I don't know. You don't owe him anything. I know. But? Grace's eyes filled with tears. But I loved him, Emily. I hate that I still remember the good parts. Emily sat beside her. Grace continued. Sometimes I want him to suffer the way I suffered. Then the babies move, and I wonder if I am being unfair to them by keeping their father away. Then I remember Vanessa laughing in my living room, and I feel stupid for even thinking about him. Emily held her hand. You are not stupid. You are wounded. Grace cried quietly. That night, she wrote a reply, deleted it, wrote another, deleted that too. Finally, she sent only one sentence. I am safe. That is all you need to know. Daniel received the message while sitting alone in his office. He read it like it was both mercy and punishment. She was safe, but she was far from him. He replied immediately. Can I see you? Just once, please. Grace did not answer. Days turned into weeks. Vanessa, now desperate to keep her place, began to change. At first, she tried sweetness. She cooked for Daniel, dressed beautifully, and spoke softly whenever he was around. But Daniel no longer responded the same way. He came home late, slept in the guest room, and avoided conversations about the future. Then, Vanessa tried anger. You cannot punish me forever because Grace got pregnant, she said one night. Daniel looked tired. This is not about only the pregnancy. Then what is it about? It is about who I became. Vanessa crossed her arms. You became honest. You chose happiness. No, Daniel said quietly. I chose convenience and called it happiness. Vanessa's face twisted. So what now? You want to bring her back? You think she will just forgive you and everything will be beautiful? Daniel did not answer. Vanessa laughed bitterly. You are dreaming. Maybe he was, but dreams were all he had left. Mrs. Helen, on the other hand, began to crumble in private. She could not sleep. She would wake in the middle of the night remembering Grace's face at the door. She remembered every insult she had thrown like stones. A home without children is not a home. You have delayed my son's life enough. Go and find peace somewhere else. Now the words returned to her, each one carrying shame. One Sunday afternoon, Mrs. Helen visited her longtime friend, Mrs. Rebecca Stone, a retired school principal who had known the family for years. Mrs. Rebecca was one of the few people who could speak to Helen without fear. After listening to everything, Mrs. Rebecca removed her glasses slowly. Helen, she said, you did not make a mistake. You committed cruelty. Mrs. Helen flinched. I was under pressure. Pressure does not create wickedness. It reveals it. Tears gathered in Helen's eyes. I only wanted my son to have children. And now the woman carrying those children is hiding from all of you because your house became unsafe for her. Mrs. Helen covered her face. For the first time, she did not defend herself. Mrs. Rebecca leaned forward. Do not chase Grace because of the babies. Seek her forgiveness because she is human. Those words followed Helen home, but by then, damage had already spread. One evening, Grace collapsed. It happened suddenly. She had stood up to get water when a sharp pain gripped her lower back. The glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. She gasped, holding the table. Emily rushed from the bathroom. Grace! I'm fine, Grace tried to say. But her knees weakened. Emily caught her before she fell. At the hospital, Dr. Laura's face was serious. Her blood pressure is high, she told Emily. She needs rest. Real rest. No stress. No emotional disturbance. With triplets, we have to be very careful. Grace lay on the hospital bed, exhausted, frightened, and angry at her own body for not being stronger. Emily called her younger brother Mark to help bring some things from the apartment. Mark was kind, calm, and protective. He had known Grace for years and always called her Big Sis. When Mark arrived at the hospital, he found Emily sitting outside the room with red eyes. She'll be okay, he said. Emily nodded. I know. I'm just scared. Mark looked through the glass panel at Grace sleeping. Does Daniel know? Emily's jaw tightened. No. Maybe he should. Emily turned sharply. After everything, I'm not defending him, Mark said. But if anything goes wrong and he hears later, this becomes another wound for the children one day. Emily hated that he had a point. Inside the room, Grace opened her eyes, just enough to hear the last part. Another wound for the children. Her heart squeezed. Later that night, she asked Emily for her phone. What are you doing? Emily asked. Grace's voice was weak. Calling him. Emily hesitated, then handed it over. Grace stared at Daniel's number for a long time before pressing call. Daniel answered on the first ring. Grace? His voice broke on her name. Grace closed her eyes. I'm at Green Life Medical Center, she said quietly. I had a small scare. The babies are okay. I am okay. Daniel was silent for a second. Then his voice came out rough. Babies? Grace's throat tightened. There it was. The truth she had hidden. He knew she was pregnant, but he did not know everything. Grace, he whispered. What do you mean, babies? She looked down at her stomach. One of the babies moved gently, as if reminding her that truth had its own time. Grace breathed in shakily. There are 3 of them, Daniel. The line went completely silent. Then she heard him inhale sharply. 3? Yes. Daniel made a sound that was almost a sob. Triplets? Grace wiped her tears. Yes. For the first time since the night she left, Daniel had no words at all. Grace's voice became firmer, though it still trembled. I am not calling you because I need your pity. I am not calling you because I want to return to that house. I am calling because whatever happened between us, these children did not cause it. Grace, Daniel whispered, I am so sorry. She closed her eyes tighter. Sorry. The word she had once wanted so badly. Now it felt too small for the size of the wound. I cannot talk for long, she said. I'm coming, Daniel said immediately. No. Grace, please. No, Daniel, not tonight. I only called because you should know they exist. They are my children, and I am their mother, Grace said, her voice suddenly stronger. The same mother you allowed everyone to disgrace. That silenced him. Grace took a breath. If you want to be in their lives, you will have to earn trust slowly. Not by force, not through your mother, not through guilt. Slowly. Daniel's voice shook. I will do anything. Grace did not answer because she had heard promises before. She ended the call. Daniel sat in his car outside his office, crying like a boy. Triplets. 3 children. 3 miracles. And he had sent their mother into the night with one small bag. The next morning, Daniel arrived at the hospital despite Grace telling him not to come. But he did not enter her room. He stood at the far end of the hallway, holding 3 small white gift bags and a bouquet of soft yellow flowers. His eyes were swollen from lack of sleep. His shirt was wrinkled. He looked nothing like the proud man Grace had left behind. Emily saw him first. Her face hardened. She told you not to come. Daniel nodded. I know. I won't go in unless she allows it. Then why are you here? He looked toward Grace's door. Because for once I wanted to show up without demanding anything. Emily studied him carefully. Then she said, good. Stand there and learn patience. For 2 hours, Daniel stood in the hallway. Nurses passed. Visitors stared. A cleaner asked if he was waiting for someone. He only nodded. Inside the room, Grace knew he was there. Emily had told her. Grace said nothing at first, but her heart would not stay still. Part of her wanted him to leave. Part of her wanted to see his face. Part of her hated both feelings. By noon, Grace finally whispered, let him come in. Emily looked at her. Are you sure? No, Grace said honestly. But let him come. When Daniel entered the room, he stopped near the door. The sight of Grace on the hospital bed broke something inside him. She looked tired, thinner in the face, but her stomach was beautifully round beneath the blanket. Her hand rested protectively over it. For a moment, Daniel could not speak. Then he slowly lowered himself to his knees. Grace's eyes widened. Daniel, stand up. He shook his head, tears falling freely. I failed you, he said, not as a husband only, as a human being. I let people turn your pain into shame. I let my mother speak when I should have protected you. I let Vanessa enter a home you built with me. I was weak, proud, selfish, and blind. Grace looked away, tears filling her eyes despite herself. Daniel continued, I am not asking you to come back. I know I don't deserve that. I am not asking you to forgive me today. I just want you to know that I understand now. You were never empty. We were the empty ones, empty of patience, empty of loyalty, empty of love when it mattered most. Grace's lips trembled. For 7 years, she had wanted him to defend her. Now he was kneeling when the damage had already been done. Daniel, she whispered, why did it take losing me for you to see me? He bowed his head. I don't know. And that honest answer hurt more than an excuse. Before either of them could speak again, footsteps sounded in the hallway. Emily turned toward the door. Mrs. Helen appeared. She stood frozen at the entrance, staring at Grace's stomach. Behind her stood Vanessa. Grace's whole body went cold. Daniel rose quickly. What are you doing here? Mrs. Helen's eyes filled with tears as she looked at Grace. Vanessa's face, however, carried something different. Panic, anger, fear. Grace sat up slowly, one hand tightening around the bedsheet. The room became thick with everything I said. Then Mrs. Helen stepped forward, trembling. Grace, she whispered. My daughter. Grace's face hardened. Don't call me that. Mrs. Helen stopped as if the words had struck her. Vanessa suddenly smiled, but it was a dangerous smile. Well, she said softly, looking at Grace's stomach, I guess everyone came to see the miracle. Daniel turned to her. Leave. But Vanessa did not move. Instead, she reached into her handbag, pulled out a folded document, and raised it slightly. I will leave, she said. But first, maybe Grace should know the truth about why Daniel agreed to marry me so quickly. Daniel's face changed. Mrs. Ellen gasped. Vanessa, don't. Grace's heart began to pound. Daniel looked suddenly terrified. Grace stared at him. What is she talking about? Vanessa's smile widened, but her eyes were wet with bitterness. Oh, Daniel didn't tell you, she said. He didn't only betray you with me, Grace. He signed something too. Grace's breath caught. Daniel whispered, Vanessa, stop. But Vanessa opened the document and looked straight at Grace. Your husband promised me half of his company if he ever left me. Grace turned slowly to Daniel. The pain in her eyes was deeper than tears. And before Daniel could explain, one of the monitors beside Grace began to beep faster. The beeping sound filled the hospital room like an alarm from heaven. Grace's eyes stayed fixed on Daniel, but her face had changed. The hurt was no longer quiet. It was sharp, fresh, and alive again. Just when she thought her heart had already been broken in every possible way, another crack opened. Half of his company. A promise to Vanessa. A signed document. Grace could hardly breathe. Emily rushed to her side. Grace, look at me. Please, look at me. But Grace could not look away from Daniel. Is it true? She whispered. Daniel's lips moved, but no answer came out fast enough. That silence was enough. Grace closed her eyes as tears rolled down her cheeks. After everything, you were planning your future with her while I was still wearing your ring. No, Daniel said quickly, stepping forward. Grace, listen to me, please. It was not like that. Vanessa laughed bitterly. Oh, now it was not like that? Daniel turned on her. You brought that paper here to hurt her. Vanessa's face twisted. And what did you bring me into your house to do? Decorate your shame? Mrs. Helen held her chest. Vanessa, please, this is not the place. Vanessa snapped her head toward her. You don't get to silence me now. You welcomed me like a queen when you thought she had nothing. You called me daughter. You told everyone I was the woman who would save your family. Now she has triplets, and suddenly I am the mistake? Grace's breathing became heavier. Dr. Laura rushed into the room with a nurse behind her. Everyone out. Now. Daniel stepped closer. Doctor, please. Out. Dr. Laura said firmly. All of you. You are stressing my patients. Emily pointed at the door. You heard her. Leave. Daniel looked at Grace one last time. Grace, I will explain. Grace turned her face away. That hurt him more than shouting would have. He walked out slowly, followed by Mrs. Helen, who looked like her legs could barely carry her. Vanessa walked last, still holding the folded document like a weapon, but even she looked shaken when she saw Grace's condition worsening. Outside in the hallway, Daniel faced Vanessa with eyes full of anger. What do you want from me? He asked. Vanessa's voice shook. What do I want? I want you to stop acting like I forced you. I want you to stop making me the only villain in a story you helped write. Daniel froze. Mrs. Helen looked away. Because Vanessa was cruel, but she was not lying. Daniel had chosen. Mrs. Helen had pushed. Vanessa had taken advantage. And Grace had paid for all of them. Daniel lowered his voice. The agreement was wrong. I signed it when I was angry, confused, and desperate to prove I had moved on. But I never filed anything. I never married you legally. You know that. Vanessa's eyes flashed. But you promised. I promised a lie. You promised me a life. Daniel shook his head. No, I promised you a place built on another woman's pain. That kind of life was already cursed from the beginning. Vanessa slapped him. The sound echoed through the hallway. Mrs. Helen gasped. Daniel did not move. He accepted it like a man who knew he deserved worse from someone else. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained hard. You used me to escape your guilt. Your mother used me to chase grandchildren. And now that Grace is carrying 3 babies, both of you want to wash your hands and become saints. Daniel said nothing. Vanessa stepped closer. But hear me clearly. I will not disappear quietly. Then she turned and walked away. Mrs. Helen sank into a chair outside Grace's room and began to cry. Not the proud tears she used to manipulate people. Real tears. Daniel stood with his back against the wall, staring at the floor. Inside the room, Dr. Laura checked Grace carefully. Emily held Grace's hand the entire time. After several tense minutes, the beeping slowed. Dr. Laura's face softened, but her tone remained serious. Grace, you cannot continue like this. Your body is carrying 3 babies. Your heart can be strong, but your blood pressure does not understand bravery. You need calm. You need protection. You need to avoid emotional shocks. Grace nodded weakly. Emily wiped her tears. She will, I promise. Dr. Laura glanced toward the door. Then the people outside must understand that their guilt is not more important than her health. Grace closed her eyes. Her body was tired. Her soul was tired. But something inside her had finally become clear. She could not keep letting Daniel, Mrs. Helen, or Vanessa drag her back into the fire they had created. Her babies needed a mother who was alive, steady, and free. Later that evening, Daniel asked to see her again. Grace almost said no. Then she looked at her stomach and remembered what she had told him. If he wanted to be in the children's lives, he would have to earn trust slowly. Slowly did not mean never. 5 minutes, she told Emily. Daniel entered alone this time. He stayed near the door. Grace noticed. Maybe he was learning. For a few seconds, they only looked at each other. Daniel's eyes were red. His face looked older than it had the day before. Regret had changed him quickly, but Grace knew regret was not the same as redemption. Explain, she said. Daniel swallowed. After he left, my mother pushed me to make things official with Vanessa quickly. Vanessa's family wanted security. I was angry, embarrassed, and trying to prove to everyone that I had made the right decision. So I signed a private agreement promising her a share of my company if I abandoned the relationship after publicly accepting her. Grace stared at him. So you protected her future while destroying mine? His face crumpled. Yes. That single honest word made the room heavy. He did not hide. He did not twist it. He did not blame his mother. Grace's eyes filled again, but her voice stayed steady. Do you know what hurts most, Daniel? It is not even Vanessa. It is not your mother. It is you. You knew me. You knew my heart. You knew how many nights I cried quietly, so you would not feel like less of a man. You knew how badly I wanted children too. But when pressure came, you stood with the people who wounded me. Daniel lowered his head. You made me feel like my only value was my womb, Grace said. And the painful thing is, the moment you found out my womb was carrying children, you came running. No, he whispered. Yes, Grace said. That is how it feels. Daniel wiped his face. Then I will spend the rest of my life proving that is not true. Grace looked tired. Do not say the rest of your life. Start with today. Start by leaving me in peace. Daniel nodded slowly. I will cover every medical bill, he said. No conditions, no pressure. I will arrange a safe apartment for you, in your name, not mine. I will not force myself into your space. I will attend appointments only if you invite me, and I will handle my mother and Vanessa. Grace watched him carefully. A part of her wanted to reject everything from him, but another part of her knew pride could not buy medicine, safety, or baby supplies. Her children deserved support. Accepting help did not mean accepting him back. I will allow support for the babies, she said, but you cannot buy your way back into my heart. I know, and your mother does not come near me unless I ask. Yes, and Vanessa must never threaten my peace again. Daniel's jaw tightened. She won't. Grace nodded once. Then leave now. Daniel looked as if he wanted to say more, but he did not. He simply whispered, "Thank you for letting me know them, even from a distance." Grace looked away. Daniel left. And for the first time since the night she walked out, Grace felt a small piece of control return to her hands. The months that followed were not easy, but they were different. Daniel kept his word. He paid the hospital bills without using them as a chain. He found Grace a comfortable two-bedroom apartment in a quiet part of Lagos, close to the hospital, and put the documents in her name. Emily moved in with her for the last stage of the pregnancy, refusing to let Grace face the journey alone. Daniel sent baby items too. 3 cribs, 3 soft blankets, 3 tiny sets of clothes. Grace cried when they arrived, not because the gifts fixed anything, but because reality became bigger in front of her. She was going to have 3 babies. 3. Sometimes she sat in the nursery at night, staring at the empty cribs, wondering how her life had changed so much. She missed the dream of having Daniel beside her, rubbing her feet, laughing over baby names, arguing gently about who the children would look like. But she did not miss the woman she had been in that house. Small, afraid, always waiting to be defended. That Grace was gone. The new Grace was still soft, but she was no longer weak. Daniel visited only when invited. Most times, he sat in the living room while Emily stayed close. He brought groceries, asked about doctor's instructions, and left without begging. One day, Grace noticed him staring at the baby scan picture on the table. "Do you want a copy?" she asked quietly. Daniel looked surprised. "May I?" She nodded. He took the copy with both hands, like it was something holy. "Thank you," he whispered. Grace said nothing, but she saw the tears in his eyes. Mrs. Helen tried many times to visit. Grace refused every time. Daniel did not argue. But one afternoon, close to Grace's delivery date, Emily came into the room holding her phone. "It's your mother-in-law," she said. Grace's face tightened. She sent a voice note. Emily added, "You don't have to listen." Grace almost said delete it, but something in her heart told her to hear it. Not for Helen's sake, but for her own closure. Emily played it. Mrs. Helen's voice came out broken and small. "Grace, I know I do not deserve your listening ear. I know I hurt you in ways a mother should never hurt another woman. I called you empty when you were carrying the greatest blessing of our family. But even before the pregnancy, you were never empty. You were kind. You were patient. You loved my son when he had little. I was blind. I was proud. I let fear of what people would say turn me into a cruel woman. I am sorry. Not because of the babies only. I am sorry because you are a person, and I treated you like a problem. Please forgive me when your heart is ready. Even if you never allow me close, I will understand." The room was silent after the message ended. Grace stared at the wall. Emily watched her carefully. Grace did not cry immediately. The tears came slowly, quietly, with no drama. For years, she had wanted those words. Now that they had come, they did not erase the pain, but they opened a small window in a room that had been dark too long. "I'm not ready to see her," Grace said. Emily nodded. "That's okay. But maybe one day." That was enough. Vanessa, however, did not let go easily. She tried to push the agreement through a lawyer, claiming emotional damages and public embarrassment. But Daniel's legal team exposed the truth. There was no legal marriage, no formal partnership, and the agreement had been signed under personal pressure without completion of the promised conditions. Worse for Vanessa, messages surfaced showing how she had known Daniel was still legally and emotionally tied to Grace when she moved into the house. Her own friends, the same ones who laughed in Grace's living room, refused to stand by her when things became serious. The celebration ended. The gold dresses disappeared. The proud social media post stopped. Vanessa left Daniel's house one rainy evening with more anger than victory. No music played for her exit. No one danced. No friends cheered. Mrs. Helen watched from the window, remembering the night Grace had left with one small bag. The difference was painful. Grace had left with dignity. Vanessa left with bitterness. A week later, Grace went into labor earlier than expected. It began at dawn. A sharp pain woke her. At first, she thought it was another false alarm, but then another pain came, stronger than the first. Emily jumped into action immediately, calling Doctor Laura, grabbing the hospital bag and helping Grace into the car. Grace was scared. No matter how strong she had become, the thought of bringing 3 babies into the world made her tremble. Daniel was called from the hospital. He arrived breathless, his shirt buttoned wrongly, his eyes wide with fear. Emily met him at the entrance. She asked for you. Daniel froze. She did? Yes. Don't ruin it. He nodded quickly. When he entered the room, Grace was lying on the bed, sweating and gripping the sheet. Her face was full of pain, but her eyes were clear. Daniel moved close slowly. I'm here. Grace reached for his hand. Not because everything was forgiven, not because the marriage was suddenly healed, but because in that moment, they were 2 fighting parents waiting for 3 lives to arrive. Daniel held her hand and cried silently. You can do this, he whispered. Grace looked at him through tears. I know. Those 3 words told him how much she had changed. Hours later, the first cry filled the room. A baby boy, tiny, loud, alive. Grace burst into tears. Then came the second cry. A baby girl. Then the third. Another baby boy. 3 cries. 3 miracles. 3 answers to years of shame. Daniel covered his mouth and sobbed openly. Emily cried so hard the nurse gave her tissues. Dr. Laura smiled like she had witnessed something sacred. When the babies were placed near Grace, she looked at them with a love so deep it almost frightened her. They are beautiful, Daniel whispered. Grace nodded, tears falling into her hairline. They are worth everything. Daniel looked at her, then at the babies, and his face filled with a grief that had finally learned humility. I almost lost this, he said. Grace did not comfort him. Some truths must be allowed to hurt. News of the triplets spread quickly through Daniel's family. Mrs. Helen came to the hospital but did not enter the room. She stood outside with trembling hands, holding 3 small gift bags. When Emily stepped out, Mrs. Helen whispered, Please, just give this to her. Tell her I will wait as long as she wants. Emily looked at her for a long moment, then took the bags. That evening, Grace saw the gifts. Inside each bag was a tiny bracelet with one word engraved. For the first baby boy, Hope. For the baby girl, Grace. For the second baby boy, Mercy. Grace cried, not because everything was fixed, but because even broken people could begin to understand what they had broken. 3 months passed. Grace named the babies Noah, Lily, and Ethan. Her life became full of sleepless nights, feeding shadows, tiny cries, soft laughter, and a kind of joy that made all the pain behind her feel far away sometimes. Emily became the favorite auntie. Daniel visited often, helped quietly, and never crossed the lines Grace had drawn. He learned how to change diapers, badly at first. Emily laughed at him every time. He learned which baby cried the loudest, which one slept the longest, and which one smiled whenever Grace sang softly. He also learned that fatherhood was not a title a man claimed. It was a responsibility he had to live. Mrs. Helen was allowed to see the babies only after 5 months. When she entered Grace's apartment, she did not come with pride. She came with humility. She removed her shoes at the door without being asked and stood in the living room like a stranger seeking permission. Grace sat on the sofa with Lily in her arms. Mrs. Helen's eyes filled with tears at the sight of the child. She looks like you, she whispered. Grace looked down at her daughter. I hope she has my strength too. Mrs. Helen nodded, crying. I hope so. Then she turned to Grace. I am sorry. Grace held her gaze. I heard your voice note, Grace said. I believe you are sorry, but healing will take time. I know. You will not disrespect me again. Never. You will not treat my children like trophies after treating me like shame. Mrs. Helen broke down. Never, Grace. Never again. Grace watched her for a long moment, then slowly stood and placed Lily gently in her arms. Mrs. Helen began to sob. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a grandmother holding the child she almost lost because of pride. Daniel watched from the corner. tears in his eyes. For the first time in a long time, the room did not feel like a battlefield. It felt like the beginning of something softer. 1 year later, Grace stood on the balcony of her own small fashion studio in Lagos, watching the evening lights spread across the city. Yes, her own studio. During her pregnancy, she had started designing maternity dresses for herself because she could not find comfortable styles she liked. Emily posted one picture online, and women began asking for the same design. After the babies were born, Grace slowly turned that small idea into a business. She called it Graceful Beginnings. It became more than a fashion brand. It became a quiet message to women who had been rejected, delayed, mocked, or made to feel less than enough. A beginning can still be beautiful, even after a painful ending. Daniel supported the business financially, but Grace owned it fully. That was her rule, her name, her work, her victory. On the day of the official opening, many people came. Emily handled the guests like a proud sister. Dr. Laura came with flowers. Mrs. Helen came early, carrying the babies, and telling anyone who would listen that Grace was one of the strongest women she had ever known. Daniel stood near the back, watching Grace speak to customers with confidence and warmth. She wore a soft white dress, her hair styled beautifully, her face glowing with peace that no one had given her. She had built it from broken pieces. Later, when the crowd reduced, Daniel found her near the display window. "I'm proud of you," he said. Grace smiled gently. "Thank you." He looked nervous. "There is something I want to ask. Not today for an answer, just to say it." Grace turned to him. Daniel took a breath. "I still love you. I never stopped, even when I acted like I had. But I know love without loyalty is not enough. I know I broke what should have been protected. I am not asking you to forget. I am not asking you to pretend. I am asking for a chance to keep showing you the man I should have been." Grace looked through the window at the city. For a long time, she said nothing. Then she turned back to him. "Daniel, the woman you hurt is not the same woman standing here. I know. She would have run back to you the moment you cried. She would have thought forgiveness meant returning quickly. She would have swallowed her pain to keep the family together." Daniel's eyes lowered. Grace continued. "But this Grace has children watching her, a daughter who must know her worth, two sons who must learn how to treat a woman with honor. So, if I ever give you another chance, it will not be because I'm afraid to be alone. It will be because you have become safe again." Daniel nodded, tears in his eyes. "That is fair." Grace smiled softly. "For now, be their father, be consistent, be humble, be present, let time speak." Daniel accepted it. And time did speak. Not in loud promises, but in small actions. Daniel showed up for hospital appointments. He attended school registration when the triplets started early learning. He helped when they were sick. He apologized again, not only with words, but with patience. He never rushed Grace. He never used the children to pressure her. He rebuilt trust the slow, painful way. One evening, 2 years after Grace had walked out of his house, Daniel stood in her apartment holding Noah while Ethan slept on his shoulder and Lily clung to Grace's dress. The room was messy. Toys everywhere. Baby cups on the table. Cartoons playing softly. Emily snoring on the couch after babysitting for hours. Grace looked around and laughed quietly. "This house is chaos." Daniel smiled. "Beautiful chaos." Grace looked at him. Something peaceful passed between them. Not the old kind of love, innocent and untested. This was different. Wiser, slower, built with scars, truth, and careful steps. Daniel reached into his pocket and brought out Grace's old wedding ring. Grace's breath caught. "I kept it," he said softly. "Not because I thought I deserved to put it back on your finger, but because it reminded me every day of what I lost through pride." Grace stared at the ring. Memories flooded her. The proposal in the small apartment, the early laughter, the insults, the night she left, the hospital, the babies, the studio, the healing. Daniel held the ring out but did not move closer. No pressure, he said. No public scene, no demand. I just want you to know whenever you are ready, even if it takes more years, I am here. Grace looked at him for a long time. Then she took the ring. Daniel's eyes widened. But Grace did not put it on. She held it in her palm and smiled through tears. Let's not return to what we were, she said. Daniel swallowed. Okay, let's build something better. His face broke with emotion. Yes. Grace placed the ring on the table between them. Not rejected, not fully accepted, just waiting, like trust, like healing, like love that had learned humility. A few months later, Grace and Daniel renewed their vows, quietly, not in a big hall, not in front of people who wanted gossip, but in a small garden with their children, Emily, Dr. Laura, Mrs. Helen, and a few close friends. Grace wore a simple cream dress. Daniel cried before she even reached him. Mrs. Helen held the triplets and whispered, "Thank God for second chances." Vanessa was nowhere near them. Her celebration had ended long ago, but Grace's joy had grown roots. When it was time for Grace to speak, she looked at Daniel and then at the three children sitting with Emily. "I once thought losing my marriage was the end of my life," she said softly. "But it was not the end. It was the place where I found my strength. It was the place where I learned that a woman is not empty because people fail to see her value. I carried miracles when I was being mocked. I carried hope when I was being rejected. I carried a future when others thought I had nothing left." Daniel wept openly. Grace smiled through her tears. "I forgive you," she said. "Not because the pain did not matter, but because I refuse to let pain own the rest of our story. But from this day, love must never again be silent when I am hurting." Daniel took her hands. Never again. And this time, Grace believed him, not because he said it beautifully, but because he had spent years proving it quietly. As the sun set over the garden, Noah, Lily, and Ethan ran toward their parents, laughing. Grace bent down, opened her arms, and gathered all three of them close. Daniel wrapped his arms around them too. For a moment, everything was still. The woman they had called empty was surrounded by life. The woman they had thrown away became the heart of the family. The new wife who celebrated too early became a memory. And Grace, who once left with one small bag and a broken heart, now stood with her children, her dignity, her business, her peace, and a love that had finally learned how to protect her. Her ending was not just sweet. It was end. The end.
Share your thoughts, comment where you are watching from, and feel free. Most importantly, feel free to share your thoughts about this story on the comments.